So it's 11:30 by my watch, so I think we can get started. So good morning, everyone. My name is Surbhi Kumar, and I am the founder of the Dream Catchers. So just can any of you give me a thumbs up if you see a slide with the Dream Catchers name on it? Just give me a thumbs up. Let me know if you can hear me well as well with a thumbs up. Great. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, so let me start with telling you a little bit about the Dreamcatchers. We are an education consulting firm based out of Mumbai. Our mission is to assist students in realizing their dream of obtaining quality and best fit education. And you would wonder, how do we do that? So for grade 9th and 10th student, as you would agree that the immediate need is selecting the right subject combination, right stream, and for grade 11th and 12th, it's primarily the course and the college selection, right? So through our services, we help these students to carve out their selection process or their path there. We start with psychometric assessment test, which is assessing the student's aptitude, their personality traits, and their work interest areas. On the basis of these aptitude, personality, and interest, a detailed career fitment report is generated for that specific student, which gives information around the top 10 career clusters which are best aligned to this particular student. Now, the student can go ahead and explore these career options further. Now, keep in mind that psychometric assessments are just the quantitative lens, right? So we kind of marry it with our individualized and personalized counseling with the student, where we provide them information around different career entry pathways for the careers of their choice or the options which they have shortlisted. And wherever needed, we also provide detailed action plan as well. We also provide our services in higher education admission guidance, covering both colleges out of India as well as colleges within India. In terms of services or how we provide assistance to our aspirants or to students is through profile assessment and profile building or elevation, which is needed for applications in the overseas universities and some of the Indian universities as well. For country and course shortlisting, best fit college mapping, letter of recommendation and statement of purpose guidance, scholarship guidance, interview preparation, and visa guidance. So that was about the dream catchers. Okay, so next I wanted to really talk about why are we hosting career awareness webinar on entrepreneurship for our student community. So for those of you who have joined our earlier career awareness webinars would have seen that we have covered a lot of different careers, even some traditional and new age careers as well. So we have started to notice that there is a great deal of enthusiasm among India's Gen Z and Gen Alpha for becoming entrepreneurs. And this positive trend stems from the success of numerous Indian startups securing venture capital to launch new businesses in India and across the globe. Programs like Shark Tank have further raised awareness. Especially in my education consulting practice, I have started to notice that 2 out of every 10 students coming to us and seeking career guidance had expressed a desire to pursue entrepreneurship at some point of time in their life. Therefore, we decided to host this webinar on entrepreneurship. And who better to share insights with young minds than Neha Singh, who is the co-founder and CEO of Traxon. Okay. Now, with that, I just want to first start with a warm-up quiz because I realize it's a Sunday morning. So maybe this will recharge you for an insightful session with Neha. So you would be seeing a statement on your screen. I just want to know whether you think it's a correct one or it's an incorrect one. So you can put in your answers in the Q&A or chat box within the Zoho platform. So I'll read it out as well. Between 2013 to 2023, percentage of adults in India who were involved in early stage entrepreneurial activity increased from approximately 10% to 14%. Is that a correct statement or an incorrect one? Okay. I can see few responses coming in. Great. This is a quiz to recharge yourself. So please put in answers there. Yes. Okay. Great. So majority of you are right. It's the correct statement. Okay, so with that, I think we are good to start with the fireside chat with Neha. Let me see if she has joined us. Just give me a minute. Uh, Neha, I can see you there. Can you just put on your
Yeah.
video?
Yeah. Hey,
Hey, good morning. How are you, Neha?
hey, doing good. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So, let me just start with Neha's introduction. And actually, it is my pleasure to introduce Neha to all of you today. She has had a remarkable academic and professional journey. She earned her BTech and MTech degrees in computer science from IIT Bombay, where she secured multiple medals. And I was kind of surprised to really see that so many accolades and awards she has under her belt. After completing her MTech, Neha began her career at Boston Consulting Group, which is a prestigious management consulting firm, and later she worked as an investment analyst at Sequoia Capital, now known as Peak 15, which is a leading venture capital firm. With around almost like 4 years of professional experience, Neha pursued an MBA at Stanford University. An important thing to note is that she received a full tuition fee waiver because she was a recipient of esteemed Stanford Reliance Dhirubhai Ambani MBA fellowship for Indian students, and it's a highly selective fellowship. During her time at Stanford, that's when she co founded Traxon with Abhishek Goyal. And I will also want to tell you a little bit about Traxon as well. So, Traxon is an online market intelligence platform that provides private market data, assisting venture capital, private equity, and corporate development firms in tracking and analyzing startups across various technology sectors. Uh, Her company went public or IPO'd in 2022, which was a major or a significant milestone in her journey as well as her company's journey. So, without further ado, let's kick off our fireside chat with her. Welcome again, Neha.
Thanks, Sudeep. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so are you ready for our first question? Should I shoot it away?
Sure.
Okay. So it would be helpful for our audience if you can just walk us through your academic and career background before you started or decided to start your own business. Though I touched upon it a little bit in terms of your introduction, but hearing it from you would be very, very important.
Sure. So, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us on a Sunday morning. And a quick background, about my educational background is basically grew up in Bombay, grew up in, if you've heard, BRC Colony, which is a very academically oriented environment, I would say, to begin with, because half your people's parents were actually scientists. So it's a very away from, I would say, business and very academic sort of background to grow up in. And then I did my undergrad in IIT Bombay, computer science, and then worked at management consulting firm and venture capital firm, Sequoia Capital. So I think probably entrepreneurship was never like the way of life when I grew up, and it, and we'll probably cover that later. How that happened, but it was, I would say, like computer science was probably one area of interest that I had. When I was probably, I would say 8, 9. And that sort of continued, I would say, across through the years. So that's quick background about my academic background.
Great. Thank you so much, Neha. And I missed out mentioning one particular thing to our audience. You can post your questions or questions you particularly want to ask Neha in the chat or Q&A box. And together with the questions which I have kind of curated for her, I'll try to pick a few from the audience as well. And if anyone wants to go live in terms of asking the question, I will kind of like unmute and you can go ahead as well. Okay, so with that, let me move on to the next question, Neha. which is the pertinent one here. So, what inspired you to become an entrepreneur, and how did you come up with the idea for Traxon?
Sure. So that's a very interesting question. So for me, as I was mentioning, it was not that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. I see sort of two groups of people today. One of the group of people who say that I want to do a startup, and then they are searching for an idea about what is the interesting idea, which is also one way where I've seen sort of companies getting created. The other way, which is where I fall in, where I was working in a proper job, and then there was an idea which was interesting enough that I thought that I really have to start a company in that idea. So to give a background about how that came up. So I was working in Sequoia Capital, which is a venture capital fund, and you were private market investors wherein you would look at companies, you'd evaluate companies. And I realized we used to spend disproportionate time in just looking for data. To give an example, if you want to just invest in something like D2C brands, right, or a direct
Mm-hmm.
to consumer brands, internet first brands, you would actually have to scan various places to be able to find out those companies. For instance, like in general, like brands used to be one area of investment. So we
Yeah.
would actually look at hoardings, and if a brand is advertising on a hoarding, we would look at newspaper, what they ads which are running on there, any articles which are mentioned over there. So you'd actually spend a lot of time in just aggregating data. What are the investable set of companies that I can reach out to, right?
Understood.
So that was one example. Another example is that whenever you're meeting a company, the next thing is that you have to evaluate the company, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, you're meeting a company in help desk management. Now you want
Mm.
to evaluate that space. How does the help desk management space looks like globally? Who are the companies that is competing with? Or if you are evaluating anything like an online shoe selling company, now you have to evaluate has shoe as a category in online retail, has it become big in other countries as well, or has it been taken over by the generic fashion platforms? So all these things you have to constantly evaluate, like who are the other competition, who are the other global comps which also exist in the market. So you realize that if you look at the parallel public markets, there are a lot of platforms which exist, like you have a Bloomberg, FactSet. So imagine you are doing public market investing without knowing the set of companies that you can invest in. So that is how private market was. You have to also just figure out what are the companies that you can actually pitch to for taking investment, right? So we, and this was like a decade back, and we realized that over time private market will become a very large asset class, because a lot of value is getting created in that. So there has to be platforms like a Bloomberg which exists for the public market, also for the private market. And we really wish that a platform existed when we were investors. So that's how
Mm-hmm.
it started, and we started to build up like a global platform. Yeah,
Okay.
so we actually started when I was in US, during Stanford, and we started with the US as the first market, and then expanded to India and the other regions.
Got it. Thank you so much for that, Neha. And if I have to like kind of again summarize it for our students here, it was a problem or an area where you were investing a lot of time and energy during your job, which you realized could be turned into a business idea, and it is something which could be scaled as well with time. Am I correct in saying so?
That's correct.
Okay, okay. And I have started to receive questions as well. So, Dhyani and Rinal, I'll take up your questions, but hold on for maybe some more time and then I'll pick yours. Okay, so Neha, I'll move on to the next question, which is if you can give some understanding to the students out here, and even some of the parents have also joined us today. So, what does a typical day or a week look like for you? Okay, and as everyone knows, that entrepreneurs often juggle multiple hats, right? To keep their business running smoothly and for growing. Right? So, if you can really tell us the different roles which you played when you started your organization, and how your role evolved or fine tuned with the journey ahead.
So that's a great question. So throughout the journey of your company, you will have this role evolve. And I think what is probably very most interesting for the group is the initial few months, or the initial time. How does that look like? So in the initial few months, you are basically just focusing on getting the product market fit, right? You would have heard this term a lot, and what that means is that you start with a problem, but you have to find a repeatable sort of a solution which you feel that customers are really willing to pay money for,
Yeah.
right? And it also obviously the economics, everything makes sense, right? So that is the product market fit, wherein you feel that your sales cycle or getting the customer is very repeatable, right? So and that typically the founders only have to end up doing, getting the product market fit. So for in our market, for instance, we didn't have a product to begin with that okay, I'm launching a better version of like a Salesforce, for instance, right? So that kind of product didn't exist. And what would be the product, what would be the pricing, we had to actually figure that out. So so what happened is that there are various programs which some of the venture capital funds etc. run, which I think as students you can take advantage of. So we, for instance, got incubated in Lightspeed Summer Program, which is a program that they have in US for some of the universities like the Ivy League universities like Stanford and others, wherein they actually give you money without any equity, and you also get to spend time with their team.
Yeah.
Right. So we actually spent 3 months out of their office working on the problem, because we had to figure out, what is a final product that we go out to customers with, and what would be the pricing. So we actually worked with some of the senior partners to do that. So that is the time wherein you, as founders, have to spend most of the time, in just working with a set of customers, in figuring out what should be the offering and what should be the pricing, and how do you go about, right? So that is probably the one thing that you spend most of your initial few months on. And once you have hit a product market fit, wherein you see a repeatable sales process or a repeatable customer acquisition funnel, then you can think about the other things. Then your second phase of the company spends in building a lot of your in hiring, I would say, and building some of the key functions. So for instance, for marketing, for sales, etc., right? You hire people and you sort of build people on for those. So that is probably the second phase. And the third phase, wherein your company has probably a good CXO, VP, etc., the org structure is there. Then you again start spending a lot of other times in prioritizing across your different departments. So you typically end up meeting multiple departments now, and then you are focusing a lot on the key projects that and the priorities that each function is sort of working. So that's how I would say it evolves. Initial, obviously, you are spending a lot of time in getting the product market fit.
Understood. So, Neha, if you can also give some visibility to the students out here, just to get some context that when you started, there were like how many folks in the team, and now how big is Traction in terms of employee or people strength?
Right. So when we began with, for the first 3 months, it was just two founders, and working out of the Sandhill Road office, of Lightspeed's Sandhill Road office, and the co-working space that they had provided us, and spending a lot of time meeting customers. So we used to be on the road probably most of the time. Today, obviously, we are nearly 700 member team, across different departments today.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so I'll move on to my next question. And again, I think it's very important, specifically for the student community, or even for students who are thinking of like maybe not taking a formal education route and just ditching it altogether and starting with their entrepreneur journey. So, what I want to understand from you, how has your formal education influenced your journey as an entrepreneur?
So I think it's a very your formal education plays a very pivotal role, throughout your career, I would say, because there are a lot of things that you learn, and actually, whatever you learn, you don't end up using a lot in your work, because in work you anyways have to learn a new set of things. But a lot of other things you end up learning, right? You end up learning some skills, some functional skills, as well as some soft skills, as well as you end up having a peer set who then you can also sort of keep taking inspiration from going forward, and that just helps you also to set your bar high. If I were to sort of look back, what were the interesting things, prominent things that sort of probably stood out. So there were obviously some functional skills that were very useful. So for instance, coding is one thing that was very useful to have learned when I was an undergrad. And not a lot of people actually knew that the first version of Traction was actually coded by me. So when I was working as an investor, and so a good assignment is that you have to evaluate uh, like 500 companies, and then you have to basically figure out what are the five companies that you want to speak to. Now you can effectively not speak to 500 companies, and then what are the set of matrices that you can actually pull out of them to be able to shortlist that, right? So that is for instance first code that I had written.
Okay.
And so I coded in undergrad, but I didn't code for when I was working. But when the problem was there, that I wanted to get my job then more easily, then that's when I sort of brushed up my sort of coding skill and done that. So sort of that was one example of a skill that I would say is sort of very handy. And today, even whatever career you sort of end up choosing, I think that will continue to be a very handy skill that you can sort of learn. You don't have to learn sort of system design or anything, but your basic coding, your basic sort of data structure, etc. That is very um, and then that's probably one example of a functional skill. Another example, another bucket of skill is like your soft skills, right? Like for instance, one of the things that I had sort of I really like to take like some of the public speaking courses, right? Or communication, right? So communication in general is going to be a very critical part, throughout your career. If you're a business leader, communication, both sort of verbal or written, etc. Everything, right? It's not just about having a very smooth communication, but it's about being able to summarize things in a very crisp manner and being able to take your audience along with whatever you're saying, right? So that's probably an example of a soft skill that like in all your undergrad now you end up having some courses also for that you can
Yeah.
sort of take advantage to. And obviously a third is your a whole peer set, right? So throughout your education you'll interact with a lot of people, and a lot of them will actually end up doing good in their careers, and that continues to sort of raise your bar higher, I would say.
That peer also becomes your network as well, right? And helps you go a long way, even in terms of expanding your business, because you get the right connects too. Okay.
That's
Great.
exactly correct.
Thank you so much for that, Neha. So now I'll take you back to your high school years. Okay. So what I want to know more, and again for the benefit of our audience, like, were there any specific subjects or beyond subjects, like experiences during your high school years, which you think have kind of shaped you well or still help you in your journey as an entrepreneur and even in your earlier corporate stint as well?
Sure. So, a lot of things end up. When you are a student, you are still figuring out what you want to do in life, and you are still, trying to understand about a lot of things. You end up doing a lot of things when you are a student, and some of the things you really like, wherein you end up excelling, and some of the things you don't, like so much.
Mhm.
I think it's good to sort of experience a lot of those when you are a student to know what you like, and eventually what you end up becoming good at. So to give an example, for instance, like some of the things which I found very handy is like like coding, right? So coding was one particular thing, but I ended up also taking a lot of competitions which were outside your school, which was just focused on coding. For instance, Google had a coding competition, etc., right? So a lot of companies would end up doing that. I realized that that is something that I really like, right?
Okay.
So you ended up taking some of the competitions, doing that. Plus, some of the other things, for instance, like I realized a lot of my choices when I was a student was, I like tech, but I like the business impact of tech. So, for instance, if I have to choose between, like just spending probably a month coding versus spending a month on designing a business solution, I would prefer
Mhm.
the latter, So I
Okay.
realized that that is something that also is very natural to me, which I did not, which I would not have known earlier. But when I took a lot of those, competitions or a lot of those things, I realized that this is something that I ended up liking more. So then, even when I was graduating, for instance, from my undergrad, I had a choice of taking a software job in US to begin with, or taking a consulting job in India, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so both of them were actually very sort of good options to begin with. But I ended
Mm-hmm.
up choosing the business option because I realized that I crossed whenever I was a student, I always had liked the business aspect of technology more than just being pure like a software developer, right? So that was the other thing, that you end up taking a lot of those things outside your college, etc., as well. And that also helps you learn about yourself, that what are the things that you've really liked.
Great. Thank you so much for that response, Neha. And I'm sure that our students out here, like, you can really take one important thing from what she mentioned is that the more you expose yourself to the opportunities which are provided definitely within school, but also outside school, can help you know more around your areas of interest. And at the same time, like, knowing what you like is very good. And also, you may get to know what you don't like to do, which is an equally important thing as well. Okay. Okay, so with that, Neha, let me touch upon my next question. So, again, we'll come to your a decade plus entrepreneurial journey, wherein it would be helpful for students to know what were the highlights of that journey and the milestones, if you can share with all of us.
Yeah. No, obviously entrepreneurship is a very interesting journey. It's a very lot of highs and lows, lot of activity packed, I would say, time. If I were to look back and I would, summarize some of the key milestones, throughout the journey, probably some of the top three one would be, so one is having the product market fit. Right, so this is something that you will hear a lot whenever you hear about entrepreneurship, and it is something that you experience when you start. It cannot be explained as such, but like when you experience, when you start that, getting your first product market fit, getting your first initial set of customers. That, I would say, that is a key milestone. The second is obviously, as you grow the company, there are a lot of other things, you're hiring, etc., that you end up doing. Fundraisers, for instance, another interesting point, or another interesting aspect of that, to help you just accelerate the growth of the company. So we raised an institutional round, we raised round from various well-known individuals. I think one of the things that we did very well is to actually get in a lot of mentors along the way as we were doing the rounds. These were not just, so we had institutions already, but these mentors were not just for the money, but for a lot of other things, just learning from them. So for
Okay.
instance, I think some of the key things that stand out is obviously getting Mr. Ratan Tata as an investor, and it was a very humbling experience to actually meet him. Right, you've always heard his name growing up, and when he meets you, he asks questions about your business, and he does the entire some interview. It's not like it's outsourced to some other team. He actually asks you all the questions, and it's like an hour, and takes the final one. So he, getting people like Mr. Nandan Nilekani, who have seen the entire cycle of companies also do it. I think that these are some of the things that stand out in terms of the fundraise. Right. In addition to the institutional round, I think just getting a lot of the mentors, I would say, along the ones that sort of worked out for us. And obviously, the other key milestone is getting listed.
Yeah.
So that we got listed about a year and a half back. And obviously, when I was starting, if someone would have asked, would you imagine that you'll get listed in the first 10 years? The answer was obviously no. But, you'll be surprised at what ends up happening. And, when you sort of keep building, keep your heads down, keep doing that. And so that was another interesting thing. And today, for instance, I was surprised to find, like, we'll probably be end up in the top 1,000 listed companies in terms of market cap in India soon. I would not have imagined that, it's possible to do in the first 10 years of your journey. But I think you'll be surprised at what ends up happening if you just, sort of like keep your heads down and keep executing.
Great. I think execution is a very, very important thing, as you rightly said in the last as well. We may have a business idea, but doing things day in and day out, right? And just persisting with that long journey would really reap rewards sooner or later, right, Neha?
Right.
Okay, so next question, which I think you have touched upon in a way when we asked you around like your own formal education and how it helped you. Definitely, it was like a decade plus back. What I want to ask you, which is like in a different way, because we have been seeing the rise of startup culture here in India, right? And stories of students dropping out from college to start their ventures is very common. So the question which I particularly want to ask, and again it could be like different for different people, but what do you think in today's times, uh, whether formal education is still important for someone who wants to pursue entrepreneurship?
Right. No, that's a very interesting question. So I would, and there are different views of this. There are some people who, who have dropped out, and that has sort of worked well. But I'm of the camp of, just having that time in college. So I'm not saying that you do like double, triple degrees, or you do that. You figure out what you like. You end up sort of spending time on, and you obviously decide quickly what you want to do as you are sort of graduating. So for me, I would say that college was a very interesting part in absorbing a lot of things. What ended up you end up using throughout your career. And today, what has happened, I think the colleges have also become very open to entrepreneurship. So what that allows you to do is basically, even when you're in college and you are thinking about having a good idea, right, you can actually pursue your startup in parallel to doing college as well. So for instance, like when I started, I was between the first and the second year, in Stanford. And obviously you end up spending a lot of time throughout the year. But I think the college also now, because of the fact that they also want to encourage, now it's possible that you end up spending time on your startup while you're doing college. And the benefit of what being in college provides is that it opens up a lot of doors, right? So for instance, for me, for instance, just meeting a lot of your customers, which were venture capital funds, corporates. If you're a student, it just becomes very easy, because
Mm.
everyone is sort of very welcoming. If you want to reach out to anyone for any mentorship, or any questions that you have around learning from them, people are fairly open.
Yeah.
They're saying. So I think I'm of the view that now the colleges have become fairly accepting of the fact that it's very important, and they also let sort of students do when they are in doing college.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on this important point, Neha. Next is something which again, it's a very important thing, kind of like if a student is thinking of starting their venture like straight out of the undergraduate course or postgraduate or even school, right? How can they determine that they are ready to pursue entrepreneurship, right? What could be maybe some low risk strategies which they can employ there and see whether their idea has some merit or not?
Right. No, that's a very interesting point. So one is basically that you start working on the idea, and then you are very open in terms of iteration. So I think you have to be open in two things. One is you have to be open for iterations. You have to be open for feedback. What you end up doing is that don't build that in isolation. Don't just do it in isolation without speaking to a lot of people. Doing that, I think one good way or early way to sort of validate your idea is one is obviously speak to people in the ecosystem, which may be sort of investors or angel investors who have seen a lot of the business ideas, right? And they can probably help you with the common pitfalls, I would say. Just
Mhm.
understanding, for instance, anything common that you're thinking about, anything which has been done, etc., right? So that is one thing. They speak to people in the ecosystem, or people which is relevant to the idea, industry, etc., that you're starting in. I would say that is one big thing. The second thing is obviously, be open for iteration. Stanford had this course which encouraged, like, every meeting that you have every week, they would ask you for the update, in a sense that, were you able to sign up a customer, were you able to do this? So that just helps you in a lot of quick iteration, I would say. So you're not spending, like 3 months building the perfect product and then probably, looking for customers. You are also building it in small batches and then seeing if that resonates with the customer, if that's a key pain point or it's a very minor pain point of the customer. It's a good to have or a must have, etc. That helps you do that. So I would say two things, right? Like, one is basically seek mentorship, speak to people, be open for that. And the second thing is iterate, sort of quickly. Don't wait for building like the perfect thing, because that's take time. Just iterate in small things, in small steps, so that you're able to get feedback on your idea much faster.
Okay, got it. So, I think, again, extending upon what you said, maybe prototyping and iterating quickly would help in terms of getting an assurance whether the idea is really which has some acceptance in the market or not, right? So, I think that's a fair statement to make here.
Right. That's
Okay. So now again, my next question is, and I know here also individual perspectives may differ, but what do you think? Is it better to again start with your entrepreneurship journey as soon as like you graduate or finish your formal education, or having some kind of corporate experience has some advantage? So basically, advantage and disadvantage kind of thing.
So I'm of the camp that it's good to work in a company for, even if it's a small stint of 1 or 2 years, that is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there are different answers, and you'll probably you'll probably find out your own answer. But I'm of the camp that you're just working, even like 1 year experience in a good firm is helpful, because a lot of things that you see firsthand, which you then have to implement in your organization over time, maybe not immediately but over time. So for instance, how does the HR work? How does your appraisal process work? How does your manager interaction with the different teams work, right? A lot of things that you see firsthand over there, and that you will end up having to implement when you are in a larger organization, when your startup becomes large, right? Just having a firsthand experience, having seen those things, going through that whole thing, that's just very handy, I would
Mm-hmm.
say. And just working in a good company for that matter, right? Don't go for the salary for your first job, right? You should go for a good name, good place, which you respect, and which you feel will end up growing, becoming bigger over time. So that is very helpful. So in the first job, don't go for money, just go for good experience. And I'd say it's just helpful to have some experience to begin with, so that you can see a lot of things. You'll experience a lot of things which you end up having to implement.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a great point. As you said, that when you are working in a corporate and like a medium to big size enterprise, you get exposed to different functions besides your own job role, and definitely that can give you, no, I won't say a blueprint, but some kind of idea that once you scale up, what are the important functions which are required and how they operate. An excellent point, Neha, in terms of starting with the corporate first. Anything which you see might be a disadvantage there?
So I think if you're very sure about the idea, you can probably more focal. You could probably start earlier. So that's probably the other thing, that if you found like if the idea that you are very excited about spending the next decade, I would say, and spending a good part of your professional life on that, or career stint on, then I think you can probably also start earlier, and then just take or like meet people of that industry, of all the who have worked in that once, more focused. That's probably the only way, if you're thinking about entrepreneurship, I would say.
Okay, got it. So to add on from my end, I think one other advantage of like working and then starting out is also like you may have your own capital to start with, so you can bootstrap things, right? And then later on, as you grow, the more capital is needed. You have a lot of avenues as well, but you may bootstrap and you may have like more risk taking capability because of the money in hand, right? So that's also one advantage from my own experience, I can say so.
Right.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, so now I'll move on to something which is again related to education or courses particularly. So in the past, we have seen that courses like bachelor's in business administration or MBA, these programs were quite common, right? And now is now what we see that there are a lot of flavors of entrepreneurship courses itself, like something which is a mix of innovation and entrepreneurship, technology specific entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, so on and so forth, right? So what is your opinion on these formal courses? So that's question number one. And should really students consider those? And the bigger question is, because we are talking about these specific entrepreneurial courses, can entrepreneurship really be taught?
Right. So that's a very good question. So obviously, entrepreneurship cannot be taught, but what I have realized is that yes, there are a lot of these courses which have come about in colleges, and yeah, if you filter out the ones which are probably just for the name's sake, and if you just keep the good ones, some of them are sort of interesting. So I would not say that you have to get into any of these courses for entrepreneurship, not at all. But if you have an idea, if you're working on that, it accelerates some of your things. So,
Mm,
for instance, things like understanding of a good business model, right? What's a good business model? So, if you're thinking about a services company versus a product company, right? One is scalable, one is not scalable, right? In MBA, you also learn about a lot of businesses and how they have scaled, right?
mm,
So you can also take examples that if you end up building a B2B company versus a B2C company, how does it differ? In the
yeah,
10th year,
yeah,
what is it? You in one you are interacting with a lot of enterprise customers, in the other you are talking about very high velocity things, marketing, etc. Right? So you also learn, from the experience of just knowing about a lot of businesses, right? And like what is the unit economics? It should make sense, etc. So there are these this basic business fundamentals that I think sometimes when it is taught, it's just helpful
mm,
when you are applying those things in the business. If you're anyways, I see a lot of times, sometimes people come from a business family where a lot of things is actually probably, just there at home. They've seen it
yeah,
firsthand. They've seen people run it. That's obviously another, advantage of, just having seen it firsthand.
mm,
If for a lot of people who may not have seen it, firsthand, I think just getting a few of those is handy. I would again say it's not necessary, but if you have the option of taking a few credits through these courses, that is obviously handy. When you are in your undergrad or postgrad.
okay, great. Thank you, Neha, for sharing your perspective. Now I'll move on to another important question, and I think this is something which one of the students has also asked. So, what do you think are the core skills and competencies which are needed for entrepreneurship?
So that's a very difficult question. There isn't like sort of one skill, I would say. I think probably one thing is that you're very sincere, and you are willing to spend say the next 10 years on that idea. It's probably one thing which is most important, that you're fairly open to sort of what is the feedback that you're getting, but you also have a vision to see that this will be an interesting space, this will be an interesting idea, and you're willing to work on that for the next 10 years. Because even if your company does well or does not do well, it'll end up taking at least a good like 3 to 5 years, which is a good part of your working career, I would say. So I
Mm.
think that's probably the key thing. The other skills you'll probably just learn on the way.
Okay, okay, got it. So maybe in a way, like being resilient, working day in and day out is the most important thing, right? That's what you're trying to highlight.
Right.
Great. Okay. Now help us. Definitely, there are a lot of rewards when it comes to entrepreneur journey, but what would really help the students out here to know from you what were some of the biggest challenges which you faced when you started out, right? And then how did you overcome those? And what kept you motivated, especially during the tough times of your venture?
Right. So the reality is that 9 out of 10 startups actually fail, right? And that's a known stat. And it's not just about being the A team. To give you an example, when we were investors and we had the option of choosing an A team in a B market versus a B team in an A market, right? What that means is that you are a great team, but you are in a maybe not a sunrise market versus you're an average team in a very sunrise market. So as an investor, you'd always end up choosing the latter, which
Mhm.
is an average team in a sunrise market, because like the markets are more powerful. So it's not just one is there is startups, a lot of startups do fail. Second is that it's not just that you are you are an A team, you've got great set of co-founders, etc. But you also have to be very cognizant about the market, right? How
Mhm.
the market will end up being in the 10th year. You are not focusing behind a dying wave, etc. Right? So I would say that like entrepreneurship, don't go for entrepreneurship for like the monetary rewards, etc. Because you'll end up good chances, if you end up taking a good professional job, you'll end up making the same amount of money,
Mhm.
uh, right? And you'll end up having like the same financial outcome. I think it's more, important that you feel that whatever is the highs and lows, you are very excited about it every day. You're excited about solving this every day. So that really helps you stay through the entire highs and lows, right? So I think you have a vision of how you see that this thing should evolve, and that is what differentiates you as a founder from other people. So as people say that everyone sees the same set of problems or the same set of issues, but the founders are able to see a vision of how it will end up being, which other people may not end up seeing, right? So for instance, a good example is when there was no online e-commerce, right? There were companies like Amazon IPO'd in 1990s, right, which is way early than e-commerce was high, because at that time, at least Jeff Bezos had the vision of how retail will look like, in years to come. And obviously today, even after so many years, the company is still growing, right? So that vision, which everyone saw the same issues with retail, what existed, but he was able to have a vision, right? So I think that is what differentiates founders from others, that you are able to have a vision of how this market will evolve or how this problem things will evolve. That keeps you motivated throughout the ups and highs and lows of building.
Got it. So I hope this was very insightful for our budding entrepreneurs here who are part of our audience as such. So with that, let me move on to my next one, which is if you could go back in time, Neha, is there anything you would do differently in your career journey?
Uh, so, well, that's a interesting question. So when I think back, there's not much difference that I would not do things very differently. Probably one thing which I would tell myself again is that whatever you are doing, you should just give 100% to, and you'll be surprised at what ends up happening, right? Like to give an example, I see a lot of people who end up taking a job, but they're thinking that I'm not sure whether I wanted to pursue this career, I may want to do something else, and because of that they are not able to give their 100% to what they're working on. So
Mhm.
I think instead of that, just keep your mind open. Okay, maybe I'm not sure about, I want to continue to do this, and you're still thinking in the back of the head that what next you want to do. But
Mhm.
even though you are doing that, just whatever you're working on, just give your 100%, and you'll be surprised with what ends up happening. To give you an example, uh, when I was a VC, I didn't have to code, right? It
Mhm.
was never part of my JD. It was never asked of me that I also code. But it's just that to do my job more efficiently, I realized that that's the best way to do it, and no one else was actually doing that. Sort of, I probably just brushed up the coding skills. I probably did that on my own, and then you ended up on this idea that, oh, this can be much larger, right?
Mhm.
So I think that is one important thing, that whatever task you pick up, it's fine to be open, that you may not want to be doing, and you're still looking at new things, but just give your 100% whatever you've picked up.
Excellent advice in a way, Neha. So thank you again for that. Next question is again an important one because I feel like many students, because we talk to students day in and day out, and who are considering entrepreneurship. If they have like a great business idea, that's a different thing, but sometimes they are fascinated by the glamour of entrepreneurship, and especially like shows like Shark Tank, they have added to the glamour there, right? So with that, what reality check would you offer to students who are kind of fascinated by specifically this glamour perception?
Right. No, no, that's very true. But I would say that don't do entrepreneurship for the coolness, because it's a very long journey. There's very highs and lows. To give you an example, like every fundraise, obviously yeah, some of the fundraise are easier, but you'll hear from a lot of founders that they had to actually reach out to dozens of investors. They heard a lot of no's after uh, before hearing a yes, and that is true for large companies as well, right? So you will end up getting a lot of it'll test your, I would say, conviction multiple times.
Hmm.
So just do it if you are really excited about it. Don't do it thinking that it's cool and all your friends are doing it, but do it when you really want to do it.
Yeah, so do it for the right reason, right? Yeah. So maybe Neha, I'll take a few questions from the audience as well, and then if time permits, I'll come back to mine too. So one question is from a student Dhyani. I don't know how much it is particularly related to entrepreneurship, but let me just pick it up and see what your take is. So she has asked how to start a roadmap in business analytics.
Okay. Um, So business analytics is fairly broad, I would say. You can think about business analytics as a horizontal, which applies to a lot of companies, or you can think about business analytics in a particular vertical, right? So, for instance, you can build a product out of it, or you can build a services out of it. So I think based on what you end up doing, your roadmap will be different, right? To give an example, today if you want to apply business, analytics as a horizontal across all the companies, then you're talking about helping companies doing their business analytics much better with AI, etc. Right? So that is one core strength that you end up building. For working across large enterprises. So that is one. The second thing is that you can also apply business analytics in a vertical. So you can actually just build a product, like, right? For instance, you can build, depending on what is the area of interest. If you apply business analytics to healthcare, you can come up with a lot of interesting products which, sort of help you in early detection, a lot of diseases, etc. Right? So depending on what you want to apply these, your roadmap will differ.
Got it. Okay, I hope Dhyani that helps. Next, I'll take Ishita's question. Her question is that with AI and ML being talk of the town, uh, what do you think about any business idea which doesn't involve technology?
So that is very difficult, I would say. I think today every business has to, adopt technology or leverage technology and leverage AI, because that's a big enabler, I would say. And that's a, as if you would have seen in technology, there are different shifts that have happened, right? There's the the internet was one, cloud was the second, and people are talking about AI as being the next shift, of how things, and that is going to impact all the industries. So
Mhm.
I would say that as a business, you have to unfortunately know about it, adopt it, and leverage it, because the impact of that is disproportional. So if you don't leverage it versus like someone is leveraging that for the same problem, that there the magnitude of difference in effort is a lot. So I would say, as a business, you have to know about it and adopt it.
Great, great. I hope that helps, Ishita. And I would say every industry is a tech industry these days, right? We cannot sustain without technology now. Okay, next I'll take Mrinal's question. He's asking, how do you plan your capital allocation? And what is one major thing which you see in a startup before investing? Any inputs on that, Neha?
Sure. I'm guessing capital allocation meaning, when you're running a company, how do you think about that? So, when you're running the company, you don't think about typically, when you've raised a fund, how much of that is going to be used across different views. What you think is more of a plan. So you have a plan for your business, that you want to probably grow your sales team this much, or being able to sort of spend money in a few regions, in a few geographies, etc. You have a business plan, and then you spend money based on that. Obviously, it has to make sense. Like, you're not like doubling down on one thing without being sure that it works. So I think capital allocation, you don't have to have like a 100% plan for capital allocation when you're starting up. You do that in iteration. You understand what is the next thing that you need to spend your capital on, and continue to build on that. So that's how one way to think about capital sort of allocation, which is there. And I think
Okay.
there was a second part of the question as well, right? Which is
Yeah, there was the second part was, what is one major thing which you see in a startup before investing?
right. Yeah. So that is yeah. So like, you've been sort of active angel investors as well, because you've been in the ecosystem for so long. So I think two things. So one is like, the first thing, you look at the market, right? How good is the market? How do you see that unfold? Is that a problem which is a good to have or a must have? And so that is probably one thing that you think about. The second thing is obviously your team, right? Like, how what's the team? How, why did they start with this problem? How much do they relate to this problem, etc. Right? So these are probably the two things that you end up, sort of sort of thinking about most when you are backing entrepreneurs very, very early. I would say execution and how the metrics are going to be more in the future. May not be there when you're just starting.
Great. Thank you, Neha. I hope, Ninal, that helps. Uh, I know we have couple of more minutes, so I'll go on and pick few of my pending questions. So the next one from my side is, are there any common misconceptions or myths about entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs that you would like to address today through our platform, Neha?
So I think one myth is that you need to have, so all entrepreneurs need to have some basic set of things to make it work. I think that is incorrect. You've seen people of a variety of background become successful. And it's just good to sort of know that and being able to appreciate that. So when you're thinking about entrepreneurship, it's not that, oh, I need to have a finance degree, oh, I need to, be able to code, or I need to, be able to have skills. I think it's, you shouldn't think about that. I think even if you are like a sales background, for instance, like the Starbucks founder was a sales background, right? He ended up creating such a large company. So I think there's no one rule or one design that fits. When you are thinking about entrepreneurship, just be open to what your back or what your skill set is, and just double down on those.
Great. Words of wisdom. That's how I'll put it, Neha. Now, my last question before, if again, like if we have a minute left in hand, I will definitely want to do kind of like a rapid fire round just to know you more personally. But before that, if you could offer some advice from your side for those students who are planning to pursue entrepreneurship, and given we have few parents as well who have joined us, if you would want to offer some advice if their wards are considering entrepreneurship.
So I think if you're considering entrepreneurship, one is it's a great time, a great time in terms of the ecosystem. Second is, I'm a big proponent that you should do that in India. Instead of doing that, in some other part of the world, because now, India has like a great talent pool. I think all the things are right for the next decade, I would say, to help build a lot of startups. A lot of large companies will get created over here. So it's a great time. And, if you think about the idea, I think, just start on that, I would say. Today is great.
Great. Anything specifically for parents, Neha?
Yeah, I think just helping your kids with the idea development. Just again, don't sort of encourage your kids. If the kids are doing that just because it's cool, because they're other sort of peers are also doing it, but sort of like have them, encourage them to do it as if they're professional life depends on that. So, just be sort of high in terms of what is the output that you sort of require in terms of all the, in terms of as they are sort of building up, and just help your kid with sort of meeting more mentors, I would say, in this space, be it investors, be it people in the industry, as well as, helping with with finding the market fit, which is, on the consumer. So just, like helping the kids, sort of encouraging them to do that with more interaction than doing that in isolation today.
Great. Thank you so much, Neha. I have received one question from Shivin, and I think he wants to ask live as well. He has sent his question in the chat too, but let me just enable his audio. Shivin, if you want to go ahead and ask the question live, you should be able to do so now. Just check. Else, I can ask your question. Just check if you can speak now. I have
Hello.
enabled. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
go ahead, Shivin.
Yeah. So since trust is super important in business, especially with a new product and especially being young, lots of especially older people don't trust you. How do you gain trust while penetrating the market with a new product, and how do you deal with skeptics while doing so?
Right. No, that's a great question, Shivin. So, when you are a startup, you are actually, the odds are against you because, if there's an incumbent in the space, they have like a suite of products, and you are entering with like with this one module. And obviously it's not solving everything because you cannot spend the whole time in building the whole suite. Otherwise, it's too late, right? So as a startup, you have to, think about what is that one, I would say, wedge to enter the customer segment, which currently is not fulfilled by or which is, sort of burning enough that they are willing to sort of, spend money, spend mindshare on that, and which does not require you to build like the entire suite, right? So I think that is one very important thing, and that will again depend on this thing. But what is the wedge through which you enter customers to to sign up your initial set of customers? That's very important. Again, you don't have to wait for building the suite, otherwise it will be too late. You have to just figure out what is the one big burning thing that your customers are. It's high on their list in terms of the pain points. Like when you ask them the pain point, they should be a top few ones, and they're willing to sort of pay money also for those. So I think it's good to sort of understand what's the wedge when you are entering into an industry wherein you have incumbents when you're going against.
Sure, that makes sense. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Neha. I know we have overshooted by 2 minutes, but I think we can still go ahead with a couple of rapid fire questions if that's okay with you and our participants as well.
For,
May I?
for sure. For sure, please.
Okay. So, one fun fact about you, Neha.
One fun fact, which is fairly boring, is that I'm as as dependent on calendars and tasks on for my professional life as much as I am for my personal life as well. That all my things are on calendar and tasks, and that is the one thing that keeps me sort of balanced, I would say.
Okay. Okay. So, you are pretty organized that ways.
Yes.
Nice. Okay. So, if you could have any superpower, what would it be, Neha?
So one superpower would be, just continue to be active, like mentally active throughout the day, 100% of the time. I think that's a very important thing. Don't have like your highs and lows, throughout the day. I think just be 100% mentally active, I would say. That's a great superpower.
Neha, I don't know whether it
Sorry.
was my network or so,
Yeah.
but I couldn't hear the last like 5-6 seconds.
Okay. Okay. Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you well now.
Yeah. So I would say one superpower is that, be 100% mentally active throughout the day. It should not be that you are having your highs and lows. It should just be, like throughout the day, you're like super mentally active.
Okay, got it. Okay, so one favorite book and one favorite quote.
So for the book, unfortunately, I'm not so much of a book reader. I'm more of a podcast listener. So, now, like for even the long format, when you're thinking about reading like about a business, I prefer to sort of hear podcasts. So, like one podcast which is interesting, long format is like Acquired, which is actually started by a classmate of mine from Stanford. Which when you're talking, when you're wanting to know about businesses in detail, like, how did Starbucks grow? How did Costco grow? How did, some of these things, businesses grow? They're like very long format, 2 3 hours. So that is one thing that I really enjoy, because again, I enjoy listening about businesses and what, their entire history was. And on your last thing, which is, what is a favorite quote? So again, going back to, sort of something that I, sort of alluded to earlier, which is, give your 100% to everything that you're picking up. And, you cannot connect the dot looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So if that time I would have known that, whether this will help me, in the next 10 years, I was not sure. But now when I look back, what I did at that time was very fruitful in what ended up becoming in the next, I would say, next career stint.
Yeah, very, very relevant. With that, thank you so much, Neha, for your time. I know how busy you are, but still you came here and gave wonderful insights to all, as I said, budding entrepreneurs here. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot, Subi, for having me.
And thank you to all our participants as well. I know we overshooted by a few minutes, but I hope you found the session insightful. So have a good weekend, or the rest of the weekend, or rest of the Sunday. Enjoy yourself. Bye.